Okay, so it's 6:02. We can get started. I am Florence Renee, VP of Publicity and Sponsorship. We are here today for our second dinner event for this month of May. And this topic is more along the lines of personal development, career development. And I have a very special guest today. Her name is Ashaki Sorrell. She is actually more of a personal connection that I made recently at the top of the year, more precisely. And I just liked her energy and the things that she posted on social media. And I thought she would be a good person to bring to Central Illinois. And her topic today is basically, again, personal development, career development related, but it's specifically about showcasing the value of the good old-fashioned SWOT analysis to us project management professionals. A little bit about Ashaki is that she is, a veteran, I would say 10 years, a decade plus in the business. We were basically hoping to cover, I guess, a little bit of her background, some insights into what she's been up to, nuggets, golden nuggets that she's picked up along the way. She's gonna show and showcase, I hope, that information to all of us. My screen just froze, you guys. Hello?
We can hear you, Florence.
Yeah,
Can still see it as well.
Not
She might not be able to hear us.
Okay, I think my VPN, I think I'm back or something. I don't know what's going on. This is
Yeah, we see you and hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Okay, so I was basically recapping a little bit about Ashaki's presentation. But before I kick it to Ashaki, I just want to let you guys know we have other events coming up for the month of June. I will be sending out the e-blast, the announcements, the social media posts and everything. Please check them out and try to register for as many events as possible because we do have quite a few things in the hopper. For example, in June, I'm looking at possibly 2 events, same thing in July. So there's a lot coming. So, and I hope you all will show up and support your chapter, our chapter. For tonight, we will report the PDUs, so I will get the attendance and I will report them for you. And as far as recording, this event will be recorded. So in about a month later, if you guys wanna, or anybody wanna go back and check it out, you will be able to do so. We have YouTube, we have a YouTube channel and we have a Facebook group that the recording will be posted on. Let's see, Q&A, we will have designated time at the end, but from speaking with Ashaki, you can actually ask questions along the way, just type them up in the chat. And then Julie Kaiser and I will try to get her attention so she can cover your questions. Did I cover everything? I think I covered all the housekeeping items. Oh, one more thing. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So it's, as project management professionals, especially if you are like me, you're thinking about your career and things like that, it's very important to step back and make sure you center yourself and you don't let the pressures of the job get to you. So I just wanted to touch on that and call attention to that. Ashaki, if you don't mind, I can stop rambling and then kind of kick it to you and take over from here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Florence, for that warm introduction and welcome. Before I get started, I want to say a huge thank you to the leadership of the Central Illinois PMI chapter for allowing me this opportunity to come and speak. And I especially want to extend a huge thank you to Florence. Thank you so much. I know we connected over LinkedIn and had some conversations. And so I am just very grateful to be able to spend this time with you all. So I'll share my screen. And so we can jump right in. This is definitely interactive, so don't be shy at all, because I will definitely have questions for you. So hopefully you all can see my screen. So as Florence mentioned, today what we'll be discussing is the value of SWOT, specifically for project management professionals. I'll talk about how to leverage strengths, address weaknesses, capitalize on opportunities, and monitoring threats. Florence shared a little bit about me. I've been in project management for 10 plus years. Like many of you, I have the PMP certification. I also am a certified Scrum Master, and I have a certificate in Six Sigma Black Belt. I currently work for an organization in tech called Fastly, and I'm a senior program manager. So I absolutely love all things project management, program management. And over my career, I've had to reinvent myself. And so I've been able to use the SWOT tool to be able to do that. So hopefully today I'll be able to share some nuggets with you that you can take away and apply to your career. So what's on the agenda? Today, I'm going to answer 4 questions, at least for you, but I'm sure there'll be many more. So please feel free to put those in the chat. So what is a SWOT? I always like to start off with a definition. You know, as great project managers, we never want to assume. And then talking about how do you conduct a SWOT? And then once you conduct a SWOT, what do you do with those findings? Because it's great to have information, but I'll share this throughout my presentation. The growth equation that I live by is information plus application plus motivation equals transformation. So once you've done the SWOT, what do you want to do with that information? And then why is the SWOT analysis valuable to a project manager? Why should you invest time, energy, and resources into even sitting down and going through this exercise? So I'll at least answer those 4 questions, but hopefully many more that you guys will have along the way. So let's begin with basic definition. So what is a SWOT analysis? So SWOT stands for strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. And it's a technique that's credited to Stanford University from the 1960s and 70s. And typically the SWOT analysis is used in the strategic planning process. So you may have even been a part of a SWOT, or maybe you have conducted or facilitated a SWOT for an organization. So when an organization is thinking through where do they want to go over the next year, 3 years, 5 years, they usually will start off with a team, and they will start off talking about their current state as an organization. Where are they at financially? What is working? What isn't working? And so a SWOT analysis is a very straightforward, simple, easy to use tool that captures that current state. So it's essentially a framework for organizing and gathering information, but I have been able to use this for myself as an individual, specifically as a project management professional. So like many of you, I always like to reflect on, you know, how I'm doing, where I need to grow, maybe where are some opportunities for me for my career. And so at the end of every year, I sit down and I do that reflection. Well, about 3 years ago, I started using the SWOT tool. I thought I've conducted SWOT tools, you know, SWOT analyses in corporate America for, you know, corporations, and it's proved to be very powerful and beneficial. So I thought, you know what, I should probably use it for myself as a project manager professional. So I've been doing this for about 3 years just for myself as individuals. And I also have done this with other professionals as well. And I'll talk a little bit about how to conduct a SWOT, you know, as an individual, and then maybe also doing it in a more team or collaborative setting. So before we get too deep into the presentation, I'd love to hear from you. So have you ever conducted a SWOT analysis? So put in the chat, have you ever conducted a SWOT analysis, whether you've done it for yourself as an individual or whether you facilitated it for an organization? Okay, so John says yes, Camille says 1 time. Okay, Dan said personal and professional. We have a couple no's, couple times for an org. Okay, part of a team. So excellent. So we have a mixture. So we have some people who've done it before and some people who haven't. And so, you know, no worries at all if you have never done it, because I think today you will leave equipped knowing how to do it, why to do it, when to do it. In addition to leaving my presentation with the chapter, I also will leave you with 2 tools. One will be a series of reflection questions to really be able to answer what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, what are some of the opportunities, what are some of the threats. And then also I have an action plan, which is essentially a digital workbook that you'll be able to complete, and you'll be able to do your SWOT analysis electronically. And then you also will be able to set some goals around your findings. So I'll leave that behind. And even if you've done a SWOT before, you know that we're always changing, right? And society and the world is always changing. I think we've all have realized that over the last 2 years. So even if you've done this before, it's always beneficial, you know, to do it again. So I do it at least annually, but I even recommend doing it twice a year. Okay, so let's move right along. So let's talk a little bit about the SWOT in great detail. So let's start with the S, which stands for strengths. So strengths are internal and they're controllable. They're positive and tangible attributes, right? And so strengths can change over time. That's why even if you've done a SWOT before professionally for yourself, it's still good to do it again, because maybe something that you weren't so great at earlier in your career, you're a rock star in now, right? I know for me, I was terrified to do presentations. I was terrified to, you know, speak in front of crowds. And now I'm still scared. I'm still a little nervous, but I actually enjoy it. So what was once a weakness or maybe an area of improvement could be a strength. So they change over time. Strengths, I always view them as something that should be maximized and monetized. If you like to talk a lot and you're good at talking, you know, go get paid for speaking engagements. If you're great at facilitating, that's a way that you can maybe do some consulting work, right? So strengths should always be maximized and monetized. And I'll give just a couple of examples. Ability to lead a group of people to achieve a goal. That's a huge strength, right? We call that herding cats in the project management world. Good communication skills, right? That is a strength. That's essential to have. Professional certifications, you know, going through the pain and the labor of getting that PMP or the Scrum Master certificate, or, you know, any of those agile certificates, right? That's no easy feat. And so that is a strength. That says a lot about your character. That says a lot about your knowledge level. So that's a strength. Years of experience or even type of experience, that can also be a strength. So think of your strengths as not only just things that you have in your possession in terms of knowledge or skills, but even the experiences that you've gone through. If you've gone through a very challenging project and you came out standing still, you know, that's a strength, right? Because that talks about resilience and perseverance. So those are also things as well that you want to take into consideration when you're talking about your strength. Chaos coordinator. I love that phrase, Tanya. I'm going to have to steal that one. That is absolutely a great phrase. And that is actually a strength. If you can take something that is chaotic and bring order to it, that's an absolute strength that needs to be maximized. And I would definitely say it needs to be monetized with a raise, right? So I would love to hear from you in the chat. So what are some of your strengths? So don't be shy. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, I'm not quite sure how to answer that, this is one of the reflection questions that I'll leave behind in the document. What are some of the things that people ask your advice about? Like, what are some things that people come to you consistently and say, hey, can I talk to you about fill in the blank? That's probably because it's a strength and other people recognize it. Solution architecture. Okay, that's a great strength to have, John. Absolutely. Communication. Yes, Camille, that is excellent. Solution oriented. Building relationship with business partners. See, you guys are already working on your first quadrant of your SWOT. Technical product owner, problem solver, connecting people and organizing events. Excellent. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. This is not the time to be shy. So think about, what are you great at? Even think about your performance review. You know, if you're working in a corporate environment, or maybe if you are in consulting, why do clients come to you over another business? Those are some of the questions that you want to ask yourself when you're thinking about what are your strengths. Good memory. That is an excellent strength to have. Excellent strength. Problem solver. Problem solver is in the top 10 skills that employers look for. Putting technical topics in business terms, calm appearance in stressful situations, creative thinking, organizer. These are excellent. These are excellent strengths to have. So I want you to keep that in the back of your mind as we go through the presentation, as you think about your strengths, right? Because strengths are always a gateway into opportunities. So very good. Thank you so much for sharing. So next, let's move on to the W of the SWOT. So your weaknesses. So these are characteristics that can hinder our ability to thrive and grow to our fullest potential professionally. But here is the good thing about weaknesses. With weaknesses, they are controllable, right? So like I said, there's things that I have been completely afraid of, afraid to speak publicly, afraid to speak to crowds, right? And so with coaching, with encouragement, with accountability, I've been able to kind of move away from that. It's not probably quite yet a strength, but I've been able to improve upon that. So that's the encouraging thing about a weakness. And most of the time, people want to either ignore their weaknesses or totally just, be overwhelmed by their weaknesses. And I like a happy middle point. I don't want to ignore my weaknesses, but I also don't want my weaknesses to overwhelm me. And so my answer to that is we can address them, right? Because they can be minimized and they can ultimately be eliminated. I have a moment of vulnerability with you. One of my weaknesses, I think, for me currently that I need to grow in as a project manager is just in my emotional intelligence. And so sometimes I can just go straight for, okay, what are we doing as a team? What's next? Let's talk through due dates, and not really have some of that small talk and really build that connection. And so that's something that I recognize. And so I have been listening to podcasts. I've been talking to others who I feel like they are very exceptional in that area. So I can emulate and imitate and grow. So another example of weaknesses, low self-esteem. That's something that's very real, but that's something that can be worked through. Lack of leadership experience. Again, that's something that can be minimized and eliminated. Or lack of experience in a specific industry. So again, the weaknesses, they're not to overwhelm us, they're not to shame us, because we're all human. We got to give ourselves grace to be human, but there's something that we just need to address and to tackle. All righty, so let's move on to the O's. So opportunities. So now we're talking about things that are external to us. So with our strengths and our weaknesses, they're internal, they're within our control, but then there's opportunities that are totally outside of our control. And so when I think about opportunities, I think about areas where we can invest in and we can capitalize upon. So the best opportunities are the ones that really leverage your strengths. So I give you a quick example. So one of the things that I found when I was doing my SWOT at the end of 2021 was that I really had a lot of young women come to me and say, I want to be a project manager. I want to pivot into project management. How do you become a project manager? And I was having these conversations almost on a daily basis on LinkedIn in the chat. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just spend some time and I'll put together a 5-week training over Zoom, and I'll walk through some basic fundamentals of project management. And I looked at, okay, let me look at my strengths. So I am now an empty nester. So I have a lot of time on my hands, more time than I, normally have when my son was much younger. And so I thought, okay, so that's a strength. That's something that I can use to my advantage. That's something that I can maximize. And then now I'm having this opportunity where there seems to be an influx of people who want to enter into the project management space. And so marrying those two together was born a program called Pivoting into Project Management. And so I ended up launching a 5-week course in which I taught women live, virtually over Zoom, on the basic fundamentals of project management. We had guest speakers every week that came in that talked about, their involvement in project management. We had homework, we had hands-on exercises. And then at the end of the 5 weeks, each woman was assigned to a nonprofit where she's leading a small project over the next 90 days. And so it's just been absolutely amazing. But it was through a SWOT, looking at my strengths, looking at the opportunities, and putting those together was born this program that I didn't even anticipate doing. And so I think the best opportunities are the ones that leverage your strength and your existing skill set. Opportunities can arise from unlikely sources, right? I did not know that I would ever put together some program that women would be able to go through and learn how to pivot into project management. So don't put yourself in a box, right? Opportunities can come from any source. It's not always an opportunity in your workplace. And those are great too, but some environments may not have a PMO where you can be promoted to a project manager, PMO manager, or a program manager. So just look for opportunities anywhere, even in PMI. You know, there's a lot of opportunities, I'm sure, you know, a plethora of opportunities that can leverage your strengths. So some examples: teaching or mentoring on a topic, like I mentioned, consulting, freelancing services for small businesses or entrepreneurs. I find that there's a lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs that don't really use the discipline of project management, but it can do wonders for their business. And so there's a lot of opportunities there. And then even volunteering on a board of a nonprofit organization and using those project management skills. So I see there's a couple of things in the chat. Awesome. Thank you, Camille. I think there are many accidental project managers. We found ourselves in the career of organizing before it really had a formalized title. Absolutely, Tanya. I talked to a lot of people that, you know, that's true. They kind of accidentally fell into project management. And so that's something that you can even think through about, just your personality and some of your strengths of being able to be resilient, being able to navigate a space informally. So you're probably able to learn and grasp new concepts very easily, right? But yeah, there's lots of opportunities out there to become a project manager, or even, you know, kind of fall into the profession. I'm seeing that more and more. So let's talk lastly about the last quadrant of our SWOT, which is the T, which stands for threats. So again, very similar to opportunities, threats are external, right? They are out of our control, but we can control how we respond to them. They are things that could hinder our professional growth that we seek and desire. So a couple of examples I have: the global pandemic, completely out of our control. It's a threat. It's external, but there's a way that we can respond to it as a project management professional. And it impacts us. Maybe your company is still working remotely because of the pandemic. Maybe your company has decided not to go back into the office at all. So as a project manager, how do you navigate that? How do you lead meetings remotely if maybe you're not comfortable with technology, or maybe you've never done that before? So threats are something that we need to respond to accordingly. Economic downturn, that's another threat, right? That is a very real threat. Even lack of understanding of importance and value of the project management profession. So if there's changes in leadership in the workplace, and maybe somebody comes in and they don't quite understand the value of project management, or they have the philosophy that anyone can be a project manager, or this isn't really needed, this is kind of an administrative burden, that could be a potential threat to your role, to your career, to your PMO. And so those are things that are external. But the thing that I love about the SWOT is that we have the power to respond and be proactive. So even though that's external and is outside of our control, we can control how we respond. Oh, thank you, Florence. Also, the Great Resignation. That is great. That is a great example. And you actually are leading into my question. What are the biggest threats to a project management profession? What are the biggest threats to the project management profession? I do think the Great Resignation does have an impact. That's a threat, right? Because even if you're not the one resigning, if there's various people in your PMO that's resigning, then guess what? You may have a larger workload as your company ramps up in staff. Or one of the things that I'm seeing in my organization, a lot of developers are being picked off by, you know, bigger companies. And so some of my projects are stalling because of resource constraints. So that's a really good one. Does anybody else have any other threats that you can think of to the project management profession? Anything else top of mind?
I have one that comes to mind. So you know how PMI was, or I want to believe it is still, the premier, you know, institution for project management. I feel like there are so many other companies coming up. They're issuing designations, certifications, to the point where, in my mind, or in some way, I see that as a threat too. And I think PMI does too, because they are, they're going into Agile. They even just redid their PMI triangle just to kind of keep up. So even the institution, the premier institution, if I want to call it that, is under threat in my mind.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Florence, because those things are changing, right? And that's outside of our control. When the triangle changed, I actually posted about that on LinkedIn, and a lot of people, you know, weighed in with their different opinions. So things are changing, and can I keep up? You know, do I have the skill set? Do I have the tools needed? How do I respond to this? So I think that's a very good example. I think there's some others that are in, you know, the chat as well. So the perception that project management not required when using Agile. That's a very good point, John. So what if I'm not savvy in Scrum or Kanban? What if I am just a project manager and I've done that for years, right? And so what if my organization feels like I'm no longer needed? So that could be very real. Supply chain issues, absolutely. That definitely can impact our projects on many levels, right? Whether it's we're working with vendors or we're waiting on certain hardware to come to us for our project. So that's a very good one as well. Julie says project management is only waterfall. Project managers take too much time. Yes, people having misconceived notions about what project management is or how project management should be done is a threat. That's something outside of our control. The pandemic and consulting in healthcare, navigating the client to stay on board in the project and convincing them that it can move forward. Yes, Leslie, that is a very very good one. Very good one. And I can't even just imagine working in that healthcare space during this time. I mean, there's so many threats and challenges on top of challenges. So thank you for highlighting that and how it impacts the project as well. I tend to take exception with certain companies pushing learning project management in a week that dilutes the profession to some extent. Tanya, I'm right there with you. So like I said, a lot of people reach out to me and say, I want to be a project manager. And a lot of people I found think that they can, you know, maybe go on YouTube, look at a couple videos, and then it's over. And even the training that I took the ladies through, I was very clear, I cannot download to you 10 years of my experience in 5 weeks. And so I taught them some basics and some fundamentals. And that's why I incorporated them actually managing a project. So they were applying what they learned. And during the time of them managing the project, they actually have a mentor that can walk them through any hurdles that they may encounter. But I totally agree with you. And it does dilute the profession. Compressed or unrealistic timelines. That is a threat for sure, Lori. That's a huge threat. Some threats are open doors to opportunities. Oh, let's hear more. Let's hear more about that. You have an example of that, of some threats that open doors to opportunities? I would love to hear that. This is great discussion, by the way. Everyone can learn and keep learning, but it's never easy. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. And I agree, Leslie. We definitely have the responsibility to be able to maintain the project management as a profession and ensuring that we are representing it well, which I know that you guys at this chapter most certainly are. So yes, thank you so much for that lively interaction and conversation around threats to the profession. So now that we know what a SWOT is, so is our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities and threats. We talked about some examples of that. So how do you conduct a SWOT analysis? So I'm going to touch upon 4 different aspects of conducting a SWOT analysis. So the first one, we already have done a little bit of it, right? One of the first questions I had to you was, what are some of your strengths? So when I asked that question, you had to think, and something came to your mind, and you guys shared an array. Some shared soft skills, some people shared experiences, but you were like, okay, I am good at that. And that's okay, right? We need to know what we're good at and what we're strong at so it can be maximized and monetized. And so personal reflection is one way to conduct a SWOT analysis. So I mentioned earlier, at the end of every year, I sit back and I think through the course of my year. And I start writing down where are some areas that I think I'm doing well in, where are some areas I think I can improve, some opportunities and some threats. So that takes personal reflection. But sometimes it's not as easy as just, what are your strengths? And you need some more deeper reflection questions. Or possibly you need the input from others. So that's the second bullet that I want to talk about. So what does that look like, getting input from others if you're conducting a SWOT on yourself as a profession? You can ask your teammates. If you're in a PMO, you can ask other project managers. You can ask your leader. Okay, what are some areas that you think that I am doing well in? Where you think some areas that I need to grow in? You know, what are some opportunities that you think may be great for me based on my strengths? So that's a great conversation to have. This is a great conversation to have also with project team members. And if you're having your own consultancy, this would be great in terms of even doing a client survey. And you can tailor how you word it, but essentially you can get that data from them to find out what are some areas that your business is doing well, and where are some areas that you guys need to grow, or maybe some areas that you guys haven't explored as an organization. So I always love to bring in the input from others. And then next, industry data. So there's so many statistics out there. If you go to the Bureau of Labor, you can look at statistics that are around the project management profession. Is our profession growing? Yes, it is. Project management, you know, the PMP is still in, I believe, the top 5 certifications that are sought after. So you can look at all types of industry data and you can see, how would this impact me as a professional? And so that's another way to do the SWOT. So pulling in actual data. So it's not just stream of consciousness, or it's just not just, you know, anecdotes, but it's actual data that can back some of the opportunities. So there are a plethora of organizations that, you know, manage projects or need people to manage projects. There's data around how projects fail because they're not managed properly by professionals. So looking at that data, that tells me there's opportunities for project managers, whether it's project managers coming in as a full-time employee, coming in as a consultant, or even doing training for organizations if they have projects that are constantly failing. So industry data is also very critical that you want to pull in when you're doing your SWOT analysis. And then lastly, the societal impact. What's going on in society? What is going on in the world that would influence my SWOTs, whether it's opportunities or whether it's threats? And I think we talked a lot about threats. You guys gave some great examples. One thing that I want to highlight, because I'm in the tech world, there was an executive order that was issued last year by President Biden around cybersecurity. And so that executive order opened up a lot of conversation in the tech world around security on networks, security on applications that are being developed. What does that open up for? That opens up roles for project managers, right? And so even knowing those type of trends, or even knowing that those type of legislation that's being passed down can have an impact on us as a professional. So I love to put all of that data together, mix it up, and then start doing my SWOT and start talking through my strengths, my weaknesses, the opportunities, and threats. So it's been a combination of personal reflection, input from others, industry data, and societal impact. And so up to this point, I've talked a lot about doing this as an individual, but I do also want to highlight, I think if you're in a PMO, then there's value as well as doing a SWOT on your actual PMO. What are the strengths of the PMO? What are the weaknesses? What are some opportunities for your PMO? And then what are some of the threats? Or you also could still look at this from an individual perspective, but maybe do it with someone else. So you guys hold each other accountable and say, okay, we're going to sit down and we're gonna, you know, personally reflect on where we're at. And then we're going to share that with each other, just to hold each other accountable, to make sure that we're actually going through this process. So those are just some ideas on how to conduct a SWOT. So in the beginning, I asked if anyone conducted a SWOT, and several of you said you had. So I'm interested to hear, if you don't mind just putting in the chat, what are some of the things that you've done to conduct a SWOT when you've conducted for yourself as a professional? How have you conducted it? What are some of your strategies or your tips and tricks?
I haven't done it personally, but I've done it for other people and for, I guess, my job. But I guess the step would be the same thing. You look at historical information, patterns, you look for patterns and you reflect upon them. That would be my initial step to get started.
Excellent. So thank you for pointing that out. I love what you said about looking for patterns, because I think that that helps, because even if you blow one presentation, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a weakness or you're a horrible public speaker, right? So I think looking for the patterns really gives more concrete, realistic data. And so we have a couple of things in the chat. Tanya says, in organizations doing one-on-one feedback assessments and trying to have a relaxed conversation. Absolutely. And I can't stress enough that it's a conversation, because this is a tool for growth. This isn't a tool to shame anyone or to make anyone feel bad. It's a tool really to be able to see where you are and then where you need to go, right? And so I think a relaxed conversation really helps that go a long way. I'm more reactive to the SWOT to facilitate solutions. Okay. Well, hopefully some of the things that I shared tonight will help us to be able to be, proactive in our approach, especially when it comes to our career, because I am a very big proponent that I am in control of my career. Like, my boss is not in control of my career. My company isn't in control of my career. I am in control of my career. And so hopefully there'll be things here that you guys can apply immediately. So I want to also just talk a little bit about opportunities. So what trends in society may open opportunities for project managers? So I shared one about the executive order that was handed down by President Biden last year for cybersecurity, which has opened up the door in tech for an influx of project management, especially on the security side. What are some trends that you've seen in society that may open up opportunities for project managers that may impact your SWOT? I give you guys a second to put that in the chat, or if you feel more comfortable coming off of mute, that's okay as well.
Just thinking out loud, I'm not sure exactly how to write it, but just the need for communicators and messengers to kind of spread that message. Sometimes I feel like we're being pulled in a little bit of a marketing direction too, but we kind of are. I mean, it is the change champion, and it is being able to somehow have the voice to carry that message rather than just being status checkers, I guess.
Very good. Yeah, I love that, Tanya, because project manager, sometimes that just doesn't seem to be a title that encapsulates all that we do, right? Like, we negotiate, we communicate, we strategize, right. Sometimes we're having therapy sessions, it's like we're doing it all. And so I think that definitely opens up a door, especially in this environment where some of us are still working remotely. The company I work for is a remote only company. So we're not in an office at all, and we will never be in an office. So the communication has to be crisp. It has to be clear. It has to be exact, right? Because it can cost time, and it also can result in costing money. And so, yeah, I think that even just being able to be a great communicator really opens up the door. So we have a couple in the chat. So the use of AI and machine learning in healthcare. Absolutely. AI is huge. It is huge, and it's trending phenomenally. And there's so many conversations around what's the intersection between AI and project management. And if you can answer that, or you have an answer for that, then you can open up a world of opportunities. So thank you so much for sharing that, Leslie. Camille says educational needs assessments. Absolutely. Project managers are in so many different roles, and assessment is one of those that are very key. You have to be able to analyze, right? And so having those educational need assessments can definitely open up the door. I'm seeing an influx of teachers that are pivoting into project management. I see that a lot on LinkedIn. Actually, a lot of teachers have reached out to me, and they said, I feel like I've done project management in my classroom. And, the students are my stakeholders, the principal, the administration, the parents, the community. I really think that I've been doing project management, and I want to pivot. I've had quite a few people reach out to me. So yes, I think you bring up a really good point, Camille. Yes, there's a lot of issues there that definitely a project manager could jump in and help solve.
That's interesting that, you know, you say that about the teachers, because that's what I'm currently working on within my doctoral program, is that I have to solve an issue to a real world problem within education. And that involves a SWOT analysis and a needs assessment. So it's funny that you say that, because in the educational sector, teachers are project managers. Teachers are, you know, problem solvers. It doesn't seem so, but this is exactly what I have to do a project on.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you shared that. So thank you so much, because yes, hats off to teachers. Hats off to
Yeah.
teachers. Yes, there's project management in so many different professions, you know, even if you're not entitled, right? And some of us talked about that, you know, being that accidental project manager, but the project management competency is across so many different areas. Supply chain distribution is triggered for agile project management practices. Absolutely. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, I could definitely see opportunities there. The pace of life in business is so busy. Those of us with PM skills help to pull things together. We can drive to get things done. Yes, I've heard about people, you know, putting together projects in their home for their families, in their community. You know, I think there's a book out that's about being the project management parent or mother, but really how they've taken those skills as a project manager and applied it in the home life as well. So absolutely, I definitely feel like I've been able to, you know, do some project management with my household a bit. I was in higher education and moved to project management. Excellent, Ashley. So there's an intersection right there for you and Camille. Every class and a semester is a project for a teacher. Yes, yes, absolutely. Excellent. I'm loving this. Oh, mommy is a project manager. Thank you so much, Tanya, for giving the exact name of that title. Thank you. Thank you so much. So this is great, guys. I really appreciate your interaction and your involvement. So let's keep it moving. So we know what a SWOT is, right? And we know how to conduct a SWOT. So now that you have this information, what should you do with it? So remember, I said that my growth equation that I live by is information plus application plus motivation equals transformation. You can know how to lose weight. You can know that you should exercise and eat less. But that information alone will not shed these 50 pounds, right? I need to actually apply the information that I have. And so a SWOT is great, but you need that information. I'm sorry, somebody say something?
Can you say that again? Can you give us the equation, the recipe one more time?
Oh, yes, and I also will put it in the chat.
Perfect.
So
Thank you.
The growth equation is information plus application plus motivation equals transformation.
Nice, love it.
And so you can do a SWOT. Like we've already shared, I mean, we've already started our SWOT, right? We share some strengths, we share some weaknesses, we share some opportunities and some threats, but just to have that information is not enough. So this is what I like to do. Once I've plotted out my quadrants, I then begin to first look at my strengths and my opportunities. And I marry those two together to result in short and long-term goals. And it's not always a 1-for-1. It may be 3 of my strengths and 1 opportunity that equals this goal. And I've already shared one with you, right? Being an empty nester, having, you know, some extra time on my hands, loving to teach and intersect with people and interact with people that want to enter into project management. Those strengths combined with a lot of people wanting to enter into our field, that's an opportunity for me to be able to create this program and be able to transfer that knowledge and also help nonprofits along the way. So that intersection resulted in a goal. And, you know, it just blew my mind. I never thought that would have came about. So what do we do with our weaknesses? So again, we don't want to be overwhelmed by our weaknesses, but we don't want to ignore them. So the happy medium is to address our weaknesses. And specifically, I like to address weaknesses in a couple of ways, whether it's through setting a goal, whether it's through accountability, whether it's through some form of training, or even outsourcing. Sometimes you need a coach. Sometimes you need someone to come in and walk alongside you in that weakness. And then I like to prioritize weaknesses so that we're not overwhelmed. And so I base that on effort and impact. So I talked a little bit about my vulnerable moment earlier, right? I told you that I really need to grow in emotional intelligence and not being so fact-based sometimes, and really building that camaraderie with my team. And so I started looking at different trainings. I started looking at LinkedIn courses that was around emotional intelligence. I started emulating other leaders that I thought had a very high emotional intelligence IQ. And so I invested and I prioritized in that weakness, because the level of impact that that has on my leadership skills and me being able to help teams solve problems is huge. Now, I may have another weakness that would not yield such a great impact. So that's going to be a lower priority, because you can't work on everything at once. Otherwise, you won't work on anything, right? We know that as project managers. So think about what's the effort that it will take to address that weakness and the impact that it would yield. So that effort and impact analysis will help you define the priority. And then lastly, looking at your SWOT, because again, information is great, but you want to get to application. Respond to threats proactively based on the impact and the probability, right? So the economy could totally crash, right? That's probable. And what would the impact of that be on me as a project manager professional? My leadership could change at my organization, and maybe they don't have the same high esteem for program and project management as another leadership team. Okay, that's probable. And what would be the impact there? So I can think through proactively. And so I really think that an approach that's proactive to threats really helps minimize the anxiety that can come around changes. So I see we have some things in the chat, so let me pause for a second. Thank you so much, Julie, for putting that in there for me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, Camille, I love outsourcing. Absolutely. Not everything should be a DIY. You know, not everything you can just kind of YouTube or Google your way through. Sometimes you need to bring in other resources that have that as a strength. So we talked about the what, we talked about the how. Now let's talk about the why. And this is the motivation part of that growth equation. So why would you even take the time? You may say, I've been in project management for 10, 20, maybe 30 years. You know, maybe you're in a leadership role. Maybe you have been thriving in your career. Why would I take the time? Why do I need to invest in a SWOT analysis? First of all, it's data driven. It removes some of that emotion, right? Some of it is, you know, subjective around your strengths and your weaknesses, but a lot of things is going to be in that opportunities and threats quadrant. It should be based off of data. And even some of those strengths and weaknesses could be based off of data, depending on the source of where you've gotten that information from. It's also very purposeful. I like to be very purposeful. It's a planning tool for your professional development. Remember, you are the CEO of your career. You are in charge. You are in control of how your career goes. And so this makes you very purposeful. And this way, you're not just being blown every which way in the wind. It's simple, right? You don't have to go and, you know, buy some software or learn some program to do a SWOT analysis. You can have a notebook and a sheet of paper. But I do have a digital workbook for you. So you have that at your disposal. But it's simple. It's easy to do in that regard. And it's resourceful. It's a graphical representation of where to focus your time and attention. If you're anything like me, you're constantly having to choose between, do I attend this event? Do I go to this Zoom meeting? Do I partake in this lunch and learn? I actually let my SWOT, the results from my SWOT and the goals that I've set for myself, answer those questions. So that way I'm going to events where I am yielding benefit. I'm giving, but I'm also receiving. And so I'm just a lot more intentional and resourceful in what I do. And then lastly, why is a SWOT valuable? Because of the accountability. So I will put my goals out there. I will share it with a trusted friend so I can be held accountable. This may be something that you want to share with a coworker, with a trusted friend, with a mentor, with your leader. So that's the value of doing a SWOT. So I think we have something in the chat. So let me see. Love it. Okay. Absolutely. I think the actual application of prioritization is really cool. Yes, because you can see your weaknesses and become overwhelmed, right? And that's definitely not the intent of a SWOT. Look at it, what's going to give me the biggest bang for the buck, right? And so there are other weaknesses that I have, but right now I'm very intentional on increasing my emotional intelligence because I know the impact that it's going to have on my career as well as on my team. That's real, Florence. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. Yeah, and I think that's why it has to be a trusted friend or someone that you know that can hold you accountable and someone that can cheerlead you along the way. And I'll just quickly share, even like Tanya, she's here tonight, and I share with her, I'm terrified of speaking. She's encouraged me. And so that's a trusted friend though, right? I maybe wouldn't just say that to the entire world, or maybe now I have, because this is going to be out there on YouTube. But nonetheless, my point is the accountability should come in a package in which is going to be nurtured for your growth, not to be used as a shame technique.
I think being vulnerable and being human and admitting that we actually have weaknesses, if it is tough sometimes, because I've had people use my admitted weaknesses against me. I feel like that has probably happened to most of us. Mm-hmm. But at times you pull the right people in and the right tribe in, and you do get cheerleaders from being an actual human being and admitting that you're not perfect and that as a project manager, you don't have it all together. And that's, to me, when you become connected with other problem solvers that may see things in a different way and offer something that helps. So
that's absolutely perfect. I love that. Oh, great. Tanya's a trusted friend to many, including me. Awesome.
I love Mohib. Awesome. He's awesome. My Wichita, Kansas buddy.
So I just want to do a quick recap. So with your strengths, you want to maximize and monetize those as much as possible. You want to address your weaknesses through goal setting, accountability, training, or even outsourcing. You want to invest in opportunities that will leverage your strengths, and you want to respond to threats proactively based on impact and probability. The SWOT is a foundation for planning and accountability, but it's just a foundation. Without that application of the information plus the motivation, you will not have the transformation. But I know that you guys all want to continue to soar as project management professionals, or even if you're professionals in other spheres. That information plus the application plus the motivation will lead to transformation. So thank you so much for your interaction. Thank you for your time. And I want to open it up to any questions that you have. And then also I would love for us to stay in touch. So I'm going to put my LinkedIn in the chat. Feel free to put yours in as well. I also love phone calls or text messages or even good old-fashioned email. So thank you so much, but I will open it up for any questions that you all may have.
I don't want to monopolize tonight, but I think one or two slide decks back, I had an epiphany, because I think earlier I started saying, oh, I've never done a SWOT, but it's true, I've never done one physically. But lately, or in the last month or two, I've been doing it, and it just kind of clicked that I've been asking myself those questions. It's not a foreign concept. I've actually been doing it. I guess the next step for me is to put it down so I can kind of physically, have something in my hand, if you will, and make it real.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I'm just going to quickly share this workbook that you guys will receive, and it's totally digital. So sorry for the fast scroll, but here is the actual SWOT. So I recommend that you put in, 10 strengths, only 3 weaknesses. And I do that intentionally so you're not overwhelmed, 10 opportunities and 2 threats. Again, so you're not overwhelmed. And so to your point, Florence, when you look at your strengths and your opportunities, then you can set up to 3 goals for yourself. So I have a template here for you to follow, and I have an example. And very similar with your weaknesses, So weaknesses should be addressed, and here's a template for you to follow and an example. Because we probably have all done a SWOT, maybe not as formal as this. And so I wanted to leave behind this interactive workbook so that you can have some formality to it, so that it can be a tool for you to use, right? And so for you to be able to go back and think through how you can continue to soar and thrive and grow.
Is that in your slide deck, that workbook? Or is that?
It's going to be a separate attachment that I'll send to you that you can send out to the attendees. So I'll make my presentation available. The digital workbook also will be made available. And then I also have a third document, which is a series of reflection questions, so that when you get in front of your computer, or if you do it by hand and you start talking about, well, what are my weaknesses? I have some questions that you can ask yourself so that you can be able to populate the quadrants.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I just wanted to say this helps a lot. I am not like an attention to detail type person, and like me writing things out in a list, whether it's about myself or for whatever stuff, it's kind of, I don't know, I'm a writer, but it's difficult for me. So I think this is helpful. This template, would be helpful for my project, as well as, for myself. That's kind of, what I wanted to say. In these types of things, like I need a blueprint. I need a blueprint.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, Camille, because it wasn't until I sat down and intentionally started thinking through, all of my strengths and then the opportunities. Like when I saw it laid out graphically, that's when it started coming together for the program that I ended up launching for the women to pivot into project management. I didn't see that before. So sometimes just having everything laid out in front of you really helps put together pieces. So I hope that this will be, beneficial for you all as well.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tanya. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple of comments and a question. First of all, excellent presentation. It is very hard for me to believe that you were actually shy public speaker very recently, as mentioned by Tanya. And I would like to know your secret, but that's not the question.
Thank you so much for your kind words.
I never used SWOT as formally as discussed here.
Okay.
And I would love to. And then I see the opportunity of converting the SWOT into, like you said, goals, and then into projects for self-development or your work or whatever you want to achieve your goal to. Can you highlight how you experienced some of those and how you did it?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really good. So continuing with, looking at my strengths and looking at the opportunities, I ended up launching that entire program for pivoting into project management. And so it did turn into a project. So I created the training, I pulled in other project managers to be guest speakers, I put together a charter, I put together a roadmap for the program. I had to solicit nonprofits that would be involved so the women would have an opportunity to have a place to exercise what they learned. So it actually turned into a full-fledged program, if you will. And so that goal was, simply stated in my workbook, but it definitely morphed into something a lot bigger. Same thing with, the threats. So one of the threats for me is just even within my industry, right? And so there could be, massive layoffs that's happening, or jobs are being stalled in some areas of tech. And so how am I positioning myself proactively? So I've even started looking at the PFMP, and that's turned into a total project, looking at things from the portfolio level, not just at the project level, as I look at my career moving forward. So yes, it can definitely, those goals can definitely turn into projects, which as we know, we need to manage and look at budget and risk and all that good stuff. So yes, so I definitely look forward to you using this, and I love to hear any feedback that you have.
Oh, most definitely. I'd love to use the workbook that you're providing right now. And I look forward to the next workbook where it goes into detail into project management, because
Absolutely,
a lot of us
absolutely.
are PMPs here and ACPs, so we need it.
Yep, more opportunities, right?
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. So Florence, I know we're right at 8:01, so.
Actually, we are good on time. We can take one more question.
Okay.
If anybody has any other, because I do have a second epiphany. I don't know what's going on with me. Because, with us being a small chapter, I'm even thinking this can be used from a chapter level to kind of look at ourselves, especially with us being in Central Illinois, State Farm and Caterpillar being the two largest companies. They've had huge impact on our chapter as far as membership. For example, State Farm, I think, kind of did a transformation with Agile, and a lot of project manager roles kind of disappeared. And so I think as a chapter and trying to come out of COVID, I can see us, even my office specifically, if the other VPs don't want to, or the other board members don't want to, I can see leveraging this to kind of like come up with something to document something, just to have something crisp in my hand. I can see using that as I try to move forward and overcome the impact of the State Farm impacts, I'll just call it that to put it nicely, and COVID, trying to overcome COVID and making sure people know that we still exist, that we're still active, we're still trying to put up events and be a resource to anybody who's doing project management work or change management related jobs. So again, that's, 2 epiphanies in one night. So I think that was a success.
Yes, you know what? I love that. I love the fact that you're thinking through ways to apply it. Because yes, it can definitely be applied to us as individuals looking at our career, but most definitely, I love that it can be applied to a chapter. And I think I saw Tanya even nodding her head, because I know she's a chapter president in Baton Rouge. So I think there's so many different areas of application where it can be used, because it's looking at where you're at currently and where you want to go, right? It's a growth tool. It's a planning tool. So I love that.
No other questions, Central Illinois, no other questions? Okay, I want to pull this out. I realize we have 4 guests today with us, and that is a first, or one of the few times we've had this many guests. And I just wanted to acknowledge the 4 of you, obviously Tanya, and I have Camille, Ashley to highlight as our guest. And I think it just made the event, tonight's event, lively. I think it's good as Central Illinois to always have, to not just be so isolated or insulated. So I'm happy that you all chose to make tonight a priority. I enjoyed tonight. I don't know about you all, I certainly did. If we don't have any questions for Ashaki, I think we can kind of wrap up. I will just kind of remind you all that the event was recorded. Yes, Leslie, I agree. The event was recorded and it will be available in about 30 days from today on our YouTube channel, Facebook member group. And I will send out a survey with the attachments from Ashaki once I get them, and then use them and reach out to her via LinkedIn. She'll be more than happy to help you with your workbook and any other questions that you may have. And one last reminder, please open your emails, check our event posts, check our website, check up on us on social media. That way you can stay connected and know what we're cooking up. We have a lot of other events in planning stages, various planning stages. I'm just looking forward to having more events this year, and I hope you all will show up and come and try to make this a hip chapter. I think there's so much resources out there, and it's always good to come together and share and talk as project management people. Any other comments? Julie, did you have any last minute word? Because you were my tag team partner for tonight.
No, it was a great session. I learned a ton. I've never done a SWOT analysis before, but I absolutely agree with you, Florence, about applying this to our chapter. I think that would be really wonderful and beneficial, even just to our board, right? So thank you so much for coming and, well, not coming, but calling in and presenting to us, because it was great, and I learned a ton.
Thank you all so much. Again, thank you to the Central Illinois leadership. Thank you especially to Florence. And I want to thank all of you for your engagement, because as you know, presenting and talking in this virtual world sometimes can be a bit awkward, but you guys made it a fantastic experience for me. So thank you all. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, because I love to hear about your SWOT. And I love for you to check in on me and see how I'm doing with especially emotional intelligence. So thank you so much. And I hope you guys have a wonderful evening.
Thank you all. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
You have a
Thank you.
good one.